You're welcome.
We'll get started here in like 2 minutes, so grab your coffee or food and have a seat. Good morning, everybody. So I always joke this is the favorite day of the year for me, and that tells you a lot about me. But my name's Albert Sarvis. I am the program lead for our undergraduate geospatial technology program here at Harrisburg University. Also executive director of our Center for Applied Environmental and Geospatial Technology, where we have students get real-world experience doing work in the GIS realm here at the university. But my job today is just to give you some logistics for the day, make a few opening comments, and I'm going to hand it off to Scotty Wall, who's the state GIS coordinator, who will then kick it off to the keynote this morning. A couple of things. So we have multiple locations. This is the main room. There will also be up on floor 12. Nope, over here. Sorry, I'm usually on a different floor. Upstairs on floor 12 is where the high school lunches will be. Up on 13, 2 more floors up, is another breakout session room. Recommend you use the stairs. They're the quickest way. The elevators get kind of clogged up with students between classes, so that's something to keep in mind. And then also for the high school students, GeoInquiries. It's using GIS, ArcGIS Online in the lab out here in the corner of the building. And downstairs will be where we leave for some GPS field work and to do some indoor drone flying. So we've got some students set up to help with that as well. One other thing I want to mention is that We had originally planned to have GeoDev, our GeoDev Summit, which is for GIS application development, tomorrow. But I think this event drew so many people to focus on this event, so we've shifted that out to February 29th. That's a Thursday in February. It's Harrisburg University's spring break, so it'll be a wide open building, we hope. And if you're interested in that, which I hope you will be, we're going to have these QR codes around. You can scan it to go to that website to get registered. And we already have a bunch of speakers lined up because we were originally going to do it tomorrow. So that is an event coming up in February, so I hope everybody will consider that. The other thing I want to mention, so it is GIS Day, right? And many of you may not realize, many of you do realize, that GIS Day is worldwide. And so I thought, where are these GIS Day events happening? And there is a website that shows you where all of them are, and there are hundreds of them. And I thought, what are the most remote ones? Or what are the ones from the four corners of the earth? I should have heard a collective groan from the audience because there are no four corners of the earth. But just for an example, Reykjavik, Iceland, 64 degrees north latitude. Falkland Islands has a GIS Day at 52 degrees south latitude. America's Samoa, 170 degrees west longitude, excuse me. That's a bad mistake. 170 degrees west longitude is the Falkland Islands. And at 5 degrees west longitude is St. Helena Island, which is another British protectorate in the South Atlantic. So all over the world today is GIS Day. So you're part of a global thing happening, and I'm very happy and thrilled that we have so many of you. So that's my spiel. I just want to welcome everybody to Harrisburg University. Enjoy the day, and I'm going to hand off to Scotty.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad that we can put our hands together. We've had enough caffeine that we can do that. Yes. Raise your hand if you're not a morning person. You are my people. It's nice to meet you. Welcome to Central PA GIS Day 2023. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Al. On behalf of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, I would just love to welcome you to this year's event. My name is Scotty Wall, as he said, and I am the State GIS Coordinator for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I lead the Bureau of Geospatial Services for the Office for Information Technology. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about us in this room as GIS professionals or students. We know we make more than maps, right? We help data to create new knowledge. And then on top of it, we help it get shared to anyone and sometimes everyone. That changes the world. So bringing it from the world back into the Commonwealth. 12 years ago, almost to the day, Governor Corbett announced GIS Day in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And he has been echoed by Governor Shapiro's administration today, all these years later, for the core responsibility that geospatial technology plays in helping Commonwealth citizens locate public services near them and help everyone make better decisions. So, I would love to say thank you to the planning committee for this event, because without their group effort behind the scenes, and after that proclamation by the governor 12 years ago, without these people today meeting and planning, we wouldn't be able to be here together as craftsmen to continue to learn from each other and continue to use our craft to improve the public good. So let's give a big round of applause to all the planners of this event. And as Al mentioned, we are very honored this year to have a keynote speaker named Mike Bialish. I'd love to introduce him to you today. He will do most of his introduction himself, but he is a senior consultant and practice lead for state and local government, for natural resources and environment for customers of Esri. Mike comes from our very own Shippensburg University, where he has a master's in geoenvironmental studies, as well as undergraduates in both forest technology and geography. He has more than 28 years of experience working in GIS, both in the private and public sector. And I've recently been told that he actually was a teacher here at Harrisburg University for a couple of GIS courses. So that's exciting. So he comes to us with more than 15 years of experience in PA Natural Heritage Program, Fish and Boat Commission, and the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. We're very lucky to have him. Let's put our hands together and give him a warm Pennsylvania welcome.
In the shadows. There we go. Thank you. Is this thing on? All right, cool. Hello, everybody. I want to start by thanking you for the opportunity for me to come speak with you today. It's very nostalgic for me, if you couldn't tell from the wonderful introduction that Scotty gave me. But spent many years of my career, which I'll talk about a little bit more here in a minute, in Pennsylvania state government, teaching right here at Harrisburg University, also Shippensburg University, so on and so forth. And it's just awesome to be able to come back, give back, right? Really speaks to how close-knit we are as a community, as a GIS community, right? Rallying around geography in order to impact the world, right? Make change, everything that Scotty and Albert talked about. And I'm just really, really honored. Hopefully I don't get emotional at any point during this, but I'm just really, really honored to be back here and speaking with you all today. So if I can now figure out how to get my story map loaded here, we'll get started. All right, excellent. So the theme of GIS Day is celebrating the GIS professional. All right, and that's what my entire presentation is rooted in with you this morning, and something that we should have rooted in everything that we talk about and we do today, and really all week. This is also Geography Awareness Week, right? Hopefully we're all aware of that as well. And so this is really a time to celebrate, right? Celebrate the GIS professional, celebrate geography, the impact that it has on the world, and really just carrying that momentum forward to continue impacting and making change and things like that. So what I'm going to talk about is the evolving importance of the GIS professional and geospatial strategies. I see something happening with my computer here. Hopefully that's all right. But as was mentioned in my introduction, I'm Mike Bialish. I work for Esri. I'm in our professional services division, which is basically the consulting side of the house for Esri. I work with environment, natural resource agencies, organizations all across the country, all across the United States, which is just really, it's really a pretty sweet gig, to be honest with you, because I get to, communicate, collaborate, travel even at times, right, across the country, working with state government agencies, local government agencies, and the like, right, and how they're implementing geographic approaches in geospatial technology. So it's really, really awesome. But I am a local, as was talked about right in the introduction. So really, this is all rooted in Pennsylvania geography and GIS, but branched out right to the rest of the country. As Albert talked about, there we go. GIS Day is a huge event, and it's become bigger and bigger every year. And so Albert chose to talk about latitude and longitude. I chose to show a map, right? So this is a map of all the GIS Day events, and it's not actually, I would say, 100% complete. There's many events going on even beyond the dots that we see on the map here across the world. And it's really a global event. It just becomes bigger and bigger every year. But as you can see here, hundreds of events going on all across the world, every part of the world. I'll go ahead and kind of zoom into our area here, and we can see, I counted up 17 events going on in Pennsylvania today, right, to celebrate GIS Day, celebrate the GIS professional. Really speaks again to the community, the impact, right, that geography and GIS are having on our world, and the celebration of that today. So really, really awesome to see this, and I hope you embrace it as much as I do, throughout the day and throughout the week. Okay, so I want to start out by putting you to work, all right? So I'd like you all to pull out your phones. I know you have them, all right? Pull out your phones and scan this QR code. And what this is going to do is pull up a Survey 123. Hopefully those of you are familiar with Survey 123. It's an out-of-the-box application that we produce at Esri for data collection. And it's just two simple questions, right? What is your organization type that you come from? Right? So federal government, state government, academia, so on and so forth. And then what is your role? All right? So, and I just want to get a general sense of who's in the room. Those folks that are online, if you could fill this out as well.
And we'll just take a minute to fill this out. Hopefully everything works okay. If there's a bug, please don't, don't shoot the messenger, so to speak. So we'll just take a minute to fill this out, and then we'll show the results. Just do academia, yeah. Thought I put staff. Yeah, faculty or student. Yeah, choose one. If you want to choose other and clarify it, that's fine too. Just getting a general sense of all of us, again, as this GIS community. All right, gonna start looking at some results here. And we'll do this as a bar. I think it's easier to read. All right, go ahead and refresh one more time here. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, I want to get to know who's here, right? That kind of thing. But also to talk about us as a community, right? There's not much we do with geography, with GIS, with the complex issues that we all face that is not collaborative, right? We need to involve folks within our own organizations, whether it's GIS folks, IT folks, up through our leadership, other organizations, other agencies, right? Private sector, contractors, things like that, academia, so on and so forth, okay? And as we can see here, we're a very big mix of that within the room today and online, right? A lot of state government folks, local government, private sector, of course, academia, both faculty and students, some nonprofit, general citizens. That's great to see, right? This is open to the public, just like all the GIS Day events and so on. Let me just refresh one more time. All right, as more results come in. And we come on down here and we take a look at our roles, right? And again, this is what I'm seeing all the time, every day, all day, right? GIS professionals, as my career has evolved, as Scotty mentioned, I've been doing this for over 28 years. I'm just starting to get old, I guess. But it started out where it was a GIS professional that was implementing all this and creating maps for everybody. This has now become a much more distributed, right, approach where folks, IT professionals, organizational leadership, scientists, economic development professionals, and so on and so forth, health professionals are leveraging geographic approaches and geospatial technology, right, to make a difference, to make change, to address the very issues that are in front of us, right? And so I think we have a great representation of that here today, which is awesome to see. It's what I expected. Thank goodness one didn't dominate, right? And so, you know, just really, really happy to see that and really proud of it too. The technology, our approaches have really grown over time, and it's imperative that we work collaboratively, right? Whether we're addressing climate change, whether we're addressing infrastructure management, right? Emergency response, whatever the case may be, we need to work together, right, in order to address these, right? It doesn't fall on any one of us, but it's GIS and geography that brings it all together. And I'll talk more about that as we move forward. So thank you for filling out the survey. I hope that was interesting for you all to see as well. And again, really speaks to this notion of collaboration. I want to start out by talking a little bit more about my GIS journey. And I do this not to say, oh, look at all the great stuff I've done, right? It's more about anything is possible, right? I feel like I'm an example of that with all the various experiences and ways that I've been able to take skills in GIS and apply them to different roles, different jobs, different issues, right? Different projects, right? Things like that over the past 28 years. So again, it's getting to be a long time, right? I guess I'm getting to be a veteran, so to speak. But my GIS journey started out at Shippensburg University, as was mentioned, right? So I was there from 1994 to 1996 as a graduate student in the master's program for geoenvironmental studies. At the time, there were 2 GIS classes, an intro and an advanced. And all the GIS work we did was in this really dark, I don't know why it was so dark, but there was this dark lab down in the basement of Shearer Hall at Shippensburg, which is still where the GIS program is, and using command line ArcInfo on Unix workstations. We got any old school folks in here who did command line? Show of hands, right? ArcInfo, Unix workstations, you know what I'm talking about, right? None of this GUI, none of this user interface. right? Everything was command line. I needed to add a layer to the map. I had to write a command to do so, all right? I needed to produce the map, commands to do so, all this kind of stuff, apply symbology, whatever the case may be. Amazing transformation in the technology from then to now. Did a lot of research around environmentally sensitive areas in this local area, the Letort watershed, which is in the Carlisle area, all right? Also supported my thesis with GIS, all right? So command line approach to thesis mapping, right? Where I studied vegetation patterns along incised meanders of the Conneduguenett Creek. Fun fact, I live right next to the Conneduguenett Creek now. So, as things change, some things stay the same, I guess, right? But really, that's where my GIS background is rooted in, is at Shippensburg University as a graduate student. From there, as was mentioned, I have a lot of experience with PA state government, and I spent a year as an intern for the Bureau of State Parks, digitizing park resource management plans. I mapped some of the original park natural areas, which was awesome because I got to go out to the natural areas, right, and see those. Laurel Hill, Toby Hanna State Park, Ricketts Glen, you name it, right? All the original natural areas and some of the original mapping. Natural heritage was mentioned, a lot of threatened and endangered species mapping in state parks as well. And again, all command line ArcInfo. So as that content came in from our GPS units, was pumped into an ArcInfo based system and command line to get everything set up, maps created, and so on and so forth. See a lot of dots around here. I've got a lot of experience right here in this building and across the street at the Rachel Carson building. Seems like I can never get away from these locations, but at any rate. So from PA State Parks, and after I graduated from Shippensburg, went down to Shenandoah National Park and worked as a seasonal park ranger. I was a crew chief for the long-term ecological monitoring crew, which was pretty much LTEM was pretty much in its infancy at that point. It's a very large and distributed program now, but at that point there were about a dozen national parks, right, with these ecological monitoring programs. And so I got out, we would revisit forest plots, for example, right, do inventories and analysis of forest health and conditions, comparison with past observations, things like that. Also supported some of the development of the first park vegetation coverages. I use the word coverages on purpose because that was the formatted data within the ArcInfo days, right? We wouldn't talk about coverages these days, although do still find some every once in a while. But some of the first GIS layers for vegetation, right, within Shenandoah National Park. What was also amazing, especially compared to now, is that all the analysis that we would do at that point in time, yeah, we were pumping things into ArcInfo, but a lot of the actual analysis and monitoring results and things like that, we would dump into a separate database, right? And we would crunch numbers and generate statistics and all that kind of stuff. It was kind of separated from the map, separated from the GIS, very different than how we approach things now. Limitations of the technology at the time, things like that. At that time, I was using FoxPro. Anybody used FoxPro as a database in here? Oh my gosh, a couple of hands. I didn't expect that. Awesome. It's a very text-based approach to object-oriented programming as well as database management at the time. So we would actually pump out text-based, comma-separated text-based files, dump them into FoxPro and do our, analysis and crunching in there. It's just amazing times, right? But I feel like with this experience, it helps as you grow with that. It helps you to understand how things work, right, in some ways. And so I really, really value that experience. And I got to drive Skyline Drive every single day during my time at Shenandoah National Park. So you can't complain about that. From there, I moved on to a more full-time position with what was called the Lord Fairfax Planning District Commission in Northwestern Virginia. As you're looking at the map there, number 7 up top on the map is the Lord Fairfax. It's now called the Northern Shenandoah Planning District Commission. But I was a GIS manager, an environmental planner. This was back in getting towards the late 90s. At that point, I was developing repositories of GIS layers for regional analysis of various economic, demographic, municipal, transportation type issues and projects. And I put that in there on purpose because at that point, I wasn't going out and connecting to data like we do today, right? I wasn't accessing other people's open data. I was literally going out, gathering data, converting it, transforming it into a common format. At the time was shape files, right? Spent my days reprojecting, right? Defining coordinate systems, all this kind of stuff. Those of you who are a little bit more old school can relate, right, to develop the actual repository. Today, we would be connecting to that repository, right, and pulling in authoritative data that's updated regularly. That all fell on the GIS professional at that point, right, to maintain, right, and update and things like that. At that point, Windows 95 came out. Suddenly we had a GUI, right, and PCArcInfo and ArcView came about, and it really opened the door, though, for a lot more innovation, a lot more application of GIS, right, to critical issues and so on and so forth. From there, I went to the private sector for a while with a couple of engineering consulting firms, one up in Pottsville, Alfred Benish and Company, where I was a GIS and environmental specialist, again, for municipal, transportation, and utilities projects. I also kept my environmental background going with wetland delineation work, environmental site assessments, but infusing GIS, right, into those processes and outcomes and things like that. It's where I really first started GIS consulting. All right, I would say. So I set up some of the first GIS-focused services for the company. At the time, we did a lot of transportation work, so we were bought into GeoMedia and Intergraph products because they were very commonly used with transportation, DOTs, and the like. And also did a lot of CAD work with MicroStation, which is kind of analogous to AutoCAD for those of you who aren't familiar with that. But again, really started, working in a more consulting type of thing. Eventually moved on to be a senior GIS analyst at Buchart Horn, another engineering and architecture consulting firm. There I was a GIS manager, an analyst, and programmer, and led a 4 to 6 person GIS shop, doing a lot of the same type of work, but I would say much more expanded. Put a couple other things in here to note, also some ways that the GIS professional has changed. At that point, I was relied upon to do programming, to do analysis, to manage, right? To do project management, but also to write proposals, present on those proposals, do training. I was an Esri authorized instructor, right? And that's also something we see much more diversity in terms of multiple people and organizations fulfilling, right? These types of services and needs. It all fell on, kind of one person or a couple of people, back in the day. It's really grown, which is great, of course, and, being able to do things more collectively. From there, I always had a strong desire to work with natural heritage, with environmental issues at the state level. And so in 2004, I took a job as a central data manager for the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program, which really got me into my first sort of state. I wasn't truly a state employee, but my first true state employment, so to speak. It's based right over across the street in the Rachel Carson State Office Building. And I was contracted through Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. For those of you that don't know, the Natural Heritage Program is actually a collective, right? Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, DCNR, Fish and Boat, and the Game Commission, which again speaks to this notion of collaboration. And where I really first felt like, this collaboration stuff, I get it. I see how important it is, not only for where the heritage program's going, but how they're embracing GIS, geographic approaches to really meet their mission, their goals, that kind of thing. Critically important environmental review system, which is really important for the protection, right, of threatened and endangered species, species of special concern. Manage that, help to grow it, that kind of thing. Handled a lot of special data and analysis requests. Some of those things would be done much more automated now, but they all fell to a GIS person, at the time, and that kind of thing, and so on. So that kind of got me into the state, and with this collaboration, I really wanted to get state employment, and so in 2005, I moved over as a state employee as the GIS coordinator for the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. There I was the agency GIS program manager, did a needs assessment and plan of action, which I'll come back to here in a minute, in order to really grow the strategy, the geospatial strategy for taking the commission forward. A lot of maintenance and development of GIS data and content and making that accessible. We developed some of the first interactive maps and GIS-based stocking lists, which are still in use today, which I just can't believe it. We developed those back in 2007, and if you go to the Fish and Boat Commission website now to look up where they're stocking trout, that's all GIS-based, the content that's being delivered there. And we developed that, 15 years ago at this point, and it's just amazing and just really speaks to the power of GIS. After that, I was a GIS director for over 7 years at Pennsylvania DCNR. Again, the GIS manager for the very multifaceted DCNR. It's the Topographic and Geologic Survey, forestry, state parks, Bureau of Recreation and Conservation, and really work to centralize our GIS resources and make them accessible, right? And usable, right, for all the various initiatives and projects and implementations that DCNR has. This is when ArcGIS Online first came about, and we were the first agency, I think I'm safe to say that, to really embrace ArcGIS Online, especially for things like data collection, for forest health surveys, right, for easement inspections, land and water conservation fund inspections, all kinds of stuff, right, that we were doing as soon as ArcGIS Online came about and all the various data collection apps, right, came into play. All right. So, and then from there, I finally landed at Esri. So I had this strong desire to kind of take what I was doing here in Pennsylvania and sort of branch out and challenge myself as well, but also branch out and work with similar agencies, similar initiatives across the country. And so back in 2017, I moved on to Esri, where I'm still at today. I started out as a national account executive, more on our business development side. I'm now our practice lead for state and local environment, which is more on the consulting side, the professional services side of Esri. All right. But I get to work with environment, natural resource agencies across the country, right? All the DCNRs, DEPs, forestry, parks, agriculture, fish and wildlife, natural heritage, so on and so forth. So just a bit, just a few agencies, right? But times 50. And it's just been amazing to really, strategize and grow our GIS products, our implementations for critical environmental needs, which I'll talk about here in a minute. A lot of collaboration, right, across those agencies and with industry groups. The environmental space is one that really comes together collectively, whether it's fish and wildlife, parks, forestry, right, and really works together, right, in order to grow where they're focused, the various trends, things like that. And I get to collaborate alongside them, which is really, really awesome. Within all of this, as was sort of mentioned, I also taught for a little while, which is amazing. I encourage, if you ever have the opportunity as a GIS professional to teach, I highly encourage you to do that. It's extremely rewarding. As was mentioned, I was a corporate faculty here at Harrisburg University. Intermittently from 2009 to 17, taught Intro to GIS, Applied GIS, which was more lab-based, and Cartography, which really challenged me as well, which was awesome. At the time, we're introducing new technology to all the courses, so ArcGIS Desktop, the modern portions of that, ArcGIS Online, and so on and so forth. Worked with Albert, I don't know where Albert went, but worked with him quite a bit through all of that to incorporate that into the offerings. Also gave back, I say it that way on purpose, to Shippensburg University, where I went to grad school as an adjunct faculty there from 2011 to 13. Intro to GIS, Advanced Applied GIS, and again, introducing ArcGIS Online and web-based approaches, services-based approaches, things like that, right, to all of the offerings and courses that were taught there. Awesome experience to be able to go back, right, and teach where you went to school. And then I also, for a short stint, pre-COVID, 2018 and 19, taught as an adjunct faculty at York College. Their Intro to GIS. That one was awesome because they actually don't have a geography major there, right? They have a geography minor. And so a lot of what I was, or a lot of the students that I had came from other disciplines, right? So, for example, criminology, biology, health, so on and so forth. And so aligning the course to those disciplines, right, was a huge part of what we're doing, what we're offering, right, as part of GIS. And I'll talk more about that here in a second. But that was really awesome to be able to align, right, GIS to a lot of different disciplines and infuse that, right, in the programs that the students were taking. So anyways, hopefully it was helpful for you to see kind of my background and experience. I think it just, like I said, I did that for the reason of anything is possible with GIS, right? It's being applied. Any field you can think of, there is a place for geography and GIS, right? It's about everything we do is inherently location-based, and I think anything is really possible, right, as a GIS professional. So highly encourage you to obviously follow your dreams, but also, think big, right, in terms of where you're going to take your careers, whether specifically GIS focused or focused in a particular domain. All right, so I just want to spend a couple of minutes here just talking about some of the observations that I have and some of the ways that we approach things, of course, at Esri too, but in collaboration with our customers. And I've mentioned a couple of times already about the geographic approach. Everything we do, as I just mentioned, is inherently spatial, and all the very serious challenges that we're faced with, whether climate change, sustainability, infrastructure management, wildland fires, you name it. These are all inherently complex, but inherently spatial and location-based challenges, right? And so it's important for us as GIS professionals, right, to apply geography as a process, as a framework, right, as we address these challenges. And to bring things together in a location context, whether it's the data we're collecting, how we're visualizing and communicating around these challenges, the analysis and monitoring and planning that we do, doing this in a location-based context is extremely critical and important and will lead us to sound decision-making, right? And be able to bring together all the various content that we need, all the various data, all the various people, all the various organizations, right? We can really rally around geography in order to address all the various serious challenges that we're all faced with. And so the geographic approach really enables a wide application and integration of geographic knowledge, right, around any of the various challenges that we're faced with. And it also underpins just about any field you can think of, right? Because again, things are inherently location-based, and the geographic approach is about delivering business value through a location or geographic lens, right, to these various disciplines, tackling our most complex challenges, like I mentioned before, but also bridging all these disciplines together, bringing together health, economic development, environmental protection, conservation to address these challenges all around this medium and framework of geography, right? Hopefully I'm preaching to the choir on this. I really hope so. But, you know, when we adopt this approach, we can really impact change, and we're seeing this, and I have a lot of examples here to illustrate that, of this really coming into play with our most pressing challenges. One of those is sustainability, right? And the services and work and projects and implementations and whatnot, ensuring that they are taking sustainable approaches, right? Long-term sustainable approaches. And when we do that, we need to integrate environmental, social, economic factors. Geography and GIS, as I'll talk about in a second, are a medium to do that, right? To bring together all those economic, social system, environmental system factors, right? And using geography and maps to really illuminate and communicate, right? All the various challenges, how we're addressing them, right? The impacts that we're having, right? Towards sustainability goals, and just enabling this geographic approach, right? To everything that we're doing. It's really this mechanism, decision-making framework and mechanism for understanding. So how do we leverage GIS, right, to best ensure that we're delivering on this geographic approach? And what I would say is through an effective geospatial strategy, okay? And what this is really the effective application of a geographic approach. And it's rooted in the fact that understanding precedes action, okay? We need to understand what we're driving towards. I say sustainability, I bet you I get 25 different definitions, if not more, in this room. We need to understand what we're driving towards, the outcomes that we're looking for, the change that we're trying to impact before we can lay down technology solutions, technology platforms configured the right way. So we bring that content together, right, and deliver it to folks as they need it in whatever situation that they're in, right? And so this geospatial strategy is rooted in that understanding first, and then the technology supports that understanding. Again, those priorities, goals, objectives, that kind of thing. And it's really about applying that geographic lens or approach to organizations, to their challenges, whether state agencies, whether businesses, right? So on and so forth. And as you can see in the middle of the graphic here, it's rooted in people, process, and technology. And I would say in that order, right? We can build the best technology in the world, build it and they will come, good luck, right? You need a strategy around people and process as well, right? Okay, I'm getting an echo. There you go. All right, so, and what I mean by that, right, is we're asking people to adopt technology, right? We're asking people to adopt these geographic approaches, but they already have a way that they're doing things, right? And so to impact that change, you need a strategy around people. right? And get them to buy in, communicate well to them, right? Advocate for this and why it's important to them and how it's going to help them, right? We're asking them to change their processes, right? And we need to be able to address that too. And when we do that collectively with all this great technology that we have, that's where we see success and that's where we see change. This all needs to be facilitated by the GIS professional. The GIS professional is the glue, right, that makes all this happen. I always talk about the technology being the glue to bring everything together. It's the GIS professional that ensures that these strategies, right, are being implemented, that geographic approaches, right, and are being implemented in an optimal way. But it's also in collaboration with organizational stakeholders, right? Who has that understanding? Organization leadership, business leadership, program leads, division chiefs, you name it, right? You need to work collectively with them to have that understanding and then be able to plan and act on, right, this geographic approach through GIS technology. I hope that makes sense. It's a really important point, and I'll show examples of how this has really been, implemented. As far as that plan aspect, right, and those of you who I work with regularly, I apologize because you've seen me present these slides before, right? But that plan, right, in terms of how do we implement, right? How do we lay down our technology? How do we lay down our solutions and things like that is rooted in that understanding of people, process, and technology. And the projects that we do, the initiatives that we drive, things like that are driven by those. And it allows us to take an agile approach involving our key stakeholders throughout as we actually implement, right, our geospatial technology based on that understanding. We also need a mechanism to prioritize. I guarantee you, if we sat here with any organization or just as a group collectively, we could come up with 200 ideas of what we can do with GIS and geospatial technology. It's important to prioritize those around what's important, what's going to be impactful to your business, your organization, your agency, right? And there's many frameworks to do that, but the important thing is it's driven by business value, driven by that understanding, right? And we also, as GIS professionals, have, right, insight into what it's going to take, right, to implement these things. Are they difficult? Are they easy, right? If we combine an easy thing with a high business value, we have a quick win, right? We can impact change quickly, right? And that drives more change and more impact, right? And so on and so forth. And again, it's the GIS professional that makes all this happen and provides these mechanisms, right? But in collaboration with organizational leadership and key stakeholders and so on. Now, I want to spend 1 minute here before going to some examples about technology, and I knew that was going to jump. It did that to me earlier, so I apologize for that. So again, as I mentioned, technology, right? We can build the best technology in the world without other strategies for people and process. It may or may not be utilized, right? And what's happened with technology over the past 28 years, right? That's my experience, is it's become more open, connected, accessible, more distributed, less customization, more using out-of-the-box tools, right? Data and content's readily available. That example I gave of developing a repository and converting data and all that kind of stuff. Now, we're just going out, we're grabbing data, we're grabbing authoritative data from services and things like that, right, in order to do our projects. And so I don't know if anybody saw this graphic that I'm showing on the screen here, or the slide. This was floating around LinkedIn for the past, I know, Scotty, you saw it, for the past month or so. And it's really talking about how the technology's changed. And I would argue that the technology is available for whatever you want to do, all right? And again, this speaks to this notion of the technology's there. We need to have an effective geospatial strategy in order to implement it and impact change, right? And so we think about, kind of those major trends. We have a lot of organizations moving to the cloud, right? Adopting mobile GIS to automate processes, drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, 3D, real-time sensors, right? Machine learning, artificial intelligence to predict things, right? To extract things from LiDAR, you name it, right? All this technology's there. We need to rally around it in a strategic way in order for it to make the difference that we're looking for it to make, to impact, right, the issues, whether climate change, what have you, right, in order to be effective. And it's up to the GIS professional to make all this happen, but in collaboration, as I mentioned before, with others, with other leadership, other organizations, so on and so forth. So again, as you can tell, I could harp about this all day. But hopefully that makes sense from a conceptual kind of standpoint. And what I'm going to spend the rest of the time doing here, I've got about 20 minutes or so it looks like, is just talk through a couple of examples. Obviously, through my whole career, I focused on environment and natural resources issues, right, and challenges and projects. And we're seeing great innovation, great growth in how GIS, geographic approaches, are being adopted and utilized to combat the most, pressing issues that we have as a society, honestly. And so what I'm going to start out with within the environment and natural resources space is around outdoor recreation, all right? Pennsylvania is full of a wealth of outdoor recreational opportunities. I don't think anybody would argue that. And for many, many years, over 14 years now, we've had this Explore PA Trails GIS-based initiative, right, to deploy, to collect, manage, and deploy trails information, right? Over 650 trails, 12,000 miles are mapped and available through a nice, ready-to-use, accessible site, right, for folks to learn about opportunities and go out and recreate on our trails. A lot of collaboration here, state, federal, local, trails associations, and so on and so forth. This is over 14 years old, and I remember first working on this almost 14 years ago, and it was similar to what I described when I was down in Virginia, right, with, pulling data together, grabbing this shapefile and this data and bringing it into a repository, right, that kind of thing. That's evolved, obviously, over time, but really great example of using geospatial technology to promote outdoor recreation opportunities, which, as we saw during COVID, right, everyone was flocking to the outdoors. That continues, and really important to have these resources readily available. Taking it sort of to a next level with sort of more modern technology as well, Washington and their Office of Recreation and Conservation, right? Every state does every 5 year statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, right, to look at outdoor recreation collectively across the state and to plan for it, plan strategies, prioritize initiatives, right, things like that. It's a very collaborative type of process involving all levels of government, citizens, right, other stakeholders, things like that. And so Washington in particular, and we're seeing a lot of other states do this as well, and I'm showing actually their hub site right here, adopted a geographic approach and modern geospatial technology to actually develop the plan, right? So using things like the Survey 123 you all filled out to grab stakeholder feedback, right, and public feedback, other organizational feedback, right, things like that. Using that to drive strategy, right, and drive where things are going. And by doing this, as you can see here, they doubled the engagement. They actually just completed their latest update in 2022, last year. They doubled their engagement by applying these approaches, right, in terms of the feedback that they generated and gathered, right, from all these various stakeholders that I mentioned. And now they leverage geospatial technology to interactively deploy the plan and continue that engagement, right? So as we come down here, we can see what those priorities are. We can continue to provide feedback. These are all surveys like I was talking about. We can learn more about what this SCORP stuff is and why it's important to me, right? All this kind of stuff, right? In addition, the actual recreational inventory, right, is here as well. And so we can, go in, and if I can find it here real quick, hopefully I clicked the right place, there we go. We can come on down here, we can see the plan itself, how it was developed, go to the actual recreational inventory here and see it versus various metrics. Hopefully this loads up here pretty quick. So how many trails, recreation points, public lands, right, so on and so forth, right, that are available, a wealth of outdoor recreation opportunities in Washington, right? And so again, this interactive approach not only to the plan development, but the actual deployment. No longer are we taking a 100-page document and dropping it on a shelf someplace and hoping people use it, right? So pretty awesome stuff and really, really impactful. All right, a couple other examples more in the fish and wildlife space. Connecticut deployed an out-of-the-box dashboard for an angler recognition program. Why do I mention this, right? Well, they were seeing declines, right, in fishing license sales, right, things like that. Seeing decline in interest with youth, right, in outdoor recreation participation. And so by deploying tools like this, folks can actually drop a pin down on the map, right, upload their catch pictures and, information about their catch, right, nice trout that they caught, whatever the case may be, right, and it shows up on the map. And that's really engaging, right? Something just that simple is really, really engaging, and that recognition and, oh, well, my buddy over here did this. I'm going to go, see what I can catch, that kind of thing. And they actually doubled participation in their youth fishing programs, as well as youth license sales. They actually doubled within a year's time, based on doing initiatives like this and using geospatial technology. So really, really awesome. Taking that a step further, right? South Dakota did similar things with their licensing information, right? Taking license sales, right? And taking those and dropping them into the map. We're seeing actually on the map here by county all the various license sales, whether fishing licenses, hunting licenses, boat registrations as well, right? And being able to assess, okay, where are licenses being bought? Where were they bought? And they're not being bought anymore. They've lapsed, right? Where did they used to be bought? Now they're not being bought at all, right? So, and there's this notion of recruitment, retention, and reactivation, which is what I'm explaining to you right now. And, the livelihood of these agencies is really dependent on license sales, right? On boat registration sales, right? So on and so forth. So it's really, really critical, obviously, right, for them to be able to address this. But doing this in a geospatial context reveals trends they didn't even know existed. And South Dakota is a great example of that. They were seeing areas where they had no idea they had lapsed anglers, right? Or the volume of lapsed anglers, right? That they realized. And so what they did was then effectively adjust some of their strategies, right? And using GIS and enriching this data with demographic information, socioeconomic content, which is readily available, they were able to tailor their marketing strategies, their communication strategies, and their focuses in order to address the trends that they were seeing, right? Which is hugely critical. So just awesome, awesome innovation. And then I'm going to skip over New York, but also being able to talk about, the economic value of things like parks, right, of fishing, of hunting, right, what that economic value is. We see a great case study here in New York City in terms of parks and the economic value that they bring. But I want to focus here in Texas and kind of taking this to another level, with license sales and reservations, right, and things like that. And what they're doing here with their state parks group is actually visualizing their visitation and revenue generated, because they do, charge entrance fees and things like that. Visualizing that visitation and revenue against the investments, the capital improvement projects that they're doing, right? So we're improving a building, we're improving a campground, a campsite, whatever the case may be. What's our return on that investment, right? Are we actually impacting revenue? Are we actually impacting visitation? Are we providing a better experience, right, for our visitors, that kind of thing? And so I talked a little bit ago about the GIS professional being the glue. This is where GIS is the glue, because this is combining reservation system information, revenue information, capital projects data, GIS content into one place to be able to visualize it for impactful needs. So just a great example that I encourage you to check out. This story map will be available to you, by the way. It's publicly available, and as hopefully you're seeing, I have a lot of links in here as well that you can go visit and check out. All right, so that's outdoor recreation. Again, just scraping the surface of some of the innovation that we're seeing. I want to switch over now to land management, all right? And we're seeing a ton of innovation here and adoption of geospatial strategies and geographic approaches such as the Game Commission. James, there you are. And their prescribed fire notification web mapping. There's a whole system behind this, right? This is a very simple interface to let the public and hunters know when prescribed burns are going to take place, which are obviously a really important habitat management tool, fuel load management tool, right? Things like that. And so, but folks, why are you burning the land? Why is there smoke? All this kind of stuff. So being able to proactively, right, let the public and hunters know that these are taking place, but also educating, right, on why this is important, right, and things like that. And so a great example of this from the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Taking this to another level, in Michigan, the DNR has a prescribed burn story map, which largely does the same thing. I was hoping it's actually a video that should be playing, which is, the leaf litter there burning. But what they're doing here is doing much the same of talking about where they're doing prescribed burns, right? So we come on down here and we see an interactive map showing that in 2022. But then also telling the story of these activities, right? Before, during, and after the burn, right? And really just educating the public on why this is important, how it takes place, right? And really just garnering that understanding and support, right, for these programs. That's prescribed fires. When they're not so prescribed, right, wildland fires, we see some really great real-time tools or near real-time tools for wildfire response. Even right here in Pennsylvania, this is an example right out of the DCNR and the Bureau of Forestry for how they leverage geospatial technology to be that live fire map, so to speak, right? That operational awareness, right, tool to respond to wildfires on a daily, weekly, whatever basis, you know, that kind of thing. Making sure everybody's in sync from a safety perspective too, making sure our folks are safe, that they have the equipment that they need to respond to fire, right? Things like that. So really, really awesome example there, and we see innovation like that all over the country. Looking at land management and water management, in this case, from a different perspective, we see a lot of use of drones, right, and UAVs. So it's just out in Lake Tahoe, which I had the opportunity to go out there just a month and a half ago. Go there if you ever get a chance. It's an amazing place. But they're using drones, right, to look at the spread of algae, right? Also, kind of coupled with that algae are invasive Asian clams, right? They actually perpetuate the spread of algae. In this case, they fly drones every day to look at that spread, right? Look at change over time. They're starting to implement more AI and machine learning into this as well. But just a really great example, right, of being able to use that type of technology, right, with our geospatial offerings. From a more collaborative kind of perspective, forest action plans, right? So starting in 2008 with the Farm Bill from the USDA, states were asked to do a forest action plan and keep it updated on an every 10-year basis, right? So we've actually gone through 2 cycles of this. We're starting to see geospatial technology, well, not starting to see it, it's been used from the beginning, but used in much the way I described for Washington, where it's actually being used to develop the plan and then deploy the plan in a very interactive way, all right? And so it's a great example from Montana. Collaborative development, a lot of stakeholders involved, a lot of agencies, citizens, right, so on and so forth. And it really is being used, right? I talked about Understand, Plan, Act before, right? So all that feedback, all that stakeholder engagement, the understanding, this is the plan, and then the plan is being used to actually act and prioritize on the ground efforts and investments, right, such as funding and so on and so forth, to act on all the strategies, right, that came out of the Forest Action Plan. So just really, really awesome example. All right, America the Beautiful initiatives, all right? We all heard about America the Beautiful and hopefully the initiative of 30 by 30, conserving 30% of land and water in coastal areas by 2030. It's part of the America the Beautiful initiative, and a lot of that's being implemented in the states, right? Great example of using the same technology I've been describing here in California to provide visualization tools for statewide biodiversity, access, climate, conservation info, to be able to prioritize these areas, right? And identify places, in this case across California, where there are opportunities to conserve based on these goals. And also tracking this. Are we tracking towards meeting that goal of 30 by 30, right? So just, again, awesome example. And again, GIS, the GIS professional geographic approach at the root of all of this, right, and all this impactful work. And I see I'm getting a little short on time. I get going and I get passionate, you know, all this kind of stuff, but I wanted to make sure to show this video, okay? And so, again, this is this notion of land management, in this case of wildlife management as well. And so I've had the great opportunity to work with the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the wildlife aerial surveys that they conduct. It's their main mechanism to have a census, so to speak, right, of wildlife species, but also how they're tracking wildlife species, what changes are taking place, right? What management prescriptions do we need to address that, right? Things like that. And these wildlife surveys, usually done by helicopter, are a really, really critical input to that. However, traditionally, they were done with pen and paper, a separate GPS unit, a camera, you know, things like that. You're fumbling around with all this stuff in a helicopter, becomes a safety issue. But also, you've got to transform all that data into a GIS system in order to be able to analyze it. And so we're able to work with them to really come together around GIS and, you know, really impact their business, right, and how they were doing this. So let me go ahead and cue the video here. Hopefully everything works. I think we had our sound working earlier, and hopefully this is inspirational for you to see as well.
Sweet.
As people become less connected to the natural world, we're going to have to tell the story of our wildlife, but we're going to have to be able to tell it in a way that is meaningful to all. I knew at a very early age that going into wildlife management was something that I wanted to pursue. We're advocates for things that don't have a voice. Prior to European establishment, elk in North America were really distributed throughout the United States. As settlement expanded, those numbers began to decline. They were essentially removed from the state. It was through the Nevada Department of Wildlife and a lot of dedicated conservationists that we saw those numbers start to improve. And here we are today with a very bountiful population. Aerial surveys are really critical to the work that we do here. It gives us a better perspective of the health and numbers of the populations that we manage. GIS technology has proved to be very valuable in the way that we conduct operations.
Humans have impacted the landscape. We can't turn back the clock. So how can we best manage for what we have today? Being able to take that step back and visualize your information, seeing those trends across the landscape, that's when you start to be able to make some really powerful decisions. Data is just the backbone of all of it.
We have to be able to see the entire picture. We need to be able to know all of the features across the landscape that could potentially influence our populations. The first thing we do before we go out and fly is we set up a survey event into Survey 123. Things like who's flying in the aircraft, what are the weather conditions, and then most importantly is what are the species that we're going to be targeting on that flight. Once we've entered the appropriate information, we can then queue up quick capture. Traditionally, we would take a handheld GPS device and handwritten notes. We're now able to use a tablet. We've essentially completely condensed the process of manually transcribing notes and referencing that to GPS waypoints. Today we saw a lot of elk well above elevation bands that you would see in a typical winter where we had adequate snow coverage because of this ongoing drought we've been experiencing. I also expect the number of calves will probably be a little bit lower, so it's definitely playing a part in the distribution of animals. At the conclusion of our flight, we can hit submit on our survey, and we're automatically pushing all of the data that was collected, flight paths, group observations, audio recordings, to the ArcGIS server for immediate and real-time review by both our biologists and our staff. The process of transcribing information, what used to take several months, we now have at the conclusion of the survey. It allows biologists more time to be biologists and not data managers. In ArcGIS Online, we see blue lines that represent the route that the helicopter took during the flight. The dashboard's really important because this provides a summary of the number of animals that we encountered. We can use the GIS tools to review things like mining operations. These operations are often built in places right in the middle of critical migration corridors. We can also look at various disturbances on the landscape, including wildfires and habitat treatments. In some instances, we're classifying over 10,000 animals in certain areas. 30 years ago, the ability to quickly display survey data on a computer would be unheard of. Here we are being able to make real-time decisions and have real-time understanding of some of our populations, and that's just helping us make quicker decisions about how we want to manage wildlife and the things that we want to do on the landscape to improve their status.
I feel like now that we are more involved with not just the field work, but also the higher level decisions that are being made that can really kind of decide the fate of some of these species. In addition to our department making more informed decisions, you're going to be able to make better recommendations because they'll have more data at their fingertips.
All of these things, in the grand scheme of wildlife, I think that they're continually faced with growing pressures, but it's the wins that we can secure to help perpetuate those species and populations into the future. That's really what keeps me going. I have a passion for wildlife, and I'm here to protect and preserve them and ensure that not just current generations have an opportunity to enjoy their presence and to know that they exist, but that our future generations do as well.
Powerful, right? Let me tell you something else about this as well. Jenna and Cody, who I work with all the time, came to me in 2018 at our annual user conference in California and said, this is our situation. This is how we do aerial wildlife surveys. You're Esri, help us. You got to be able to help us streamline this, right, and improve it. And it was just an idea at that point. Survey 123 had just come into its own, so to speak. It's much more advanced now. Quick capture, if those of you who are familiar, that's our on-the-go, Esri's on-the-go kind of big button interface. Wasn't even developed yet. It was an idea, right? But it wasn't even in beta yet or anything. This work, as well as some other work that was going on, really steered where that product went. And it was, again, an idea, right? Another great example of that. We all know the COVID dashboard, right, that was out there. Anybody know who created that COVID dashboard? Anybody? Trivia question? Yeah. Nope, not Esri. I mean, they use our technology, but the person who actually created yeah, a student at Johns Hopkins created that dashboard. Had over 1 trillion visits and requests, right? Billions a day, literally. Like, I'm not exaggerating at all, right? Again, anything is possible, right? And as GS professionals, we need to be able to perpetuate that, right, and enable that. So anyways, hopefully it was impactful for you to see that. I know I'm running short on time here, so I'm going to just go through the rest of this really, really quickly. So that was land management. We're seeing a lot of innovation, too, in environmental protection, environmental regulation. DEP has been a long user of GIS, right, supporting permitting processes for things like MS4 and so on and so forth, providing rich tools and open data access to support. Delineation of wetlands. Eric, I know you and I will talk about this after we're done because we're always talking about wetlands, but a lot of innovation in terms of how wetland information, which is critically important, right, to our environment and to habitats and so on and so forth, how the automation of that is taking place to have better wetland data to support permitting processes, environmental protection, right, preparing for environmental reviews, out-of-the-box tools now to be able to extract wetland information, right, things like that. Really coming a long ways, right, over especially the past few years. Managing threatened and endangered species, right? A lot of automation there too in terms of how we're delivering environmental review tools to support permitting processes and ensure the protection of species of special concern. Applying an environmental justice lens to all of this, right? To our permitting processes, to environmental factors, and ensure we're taking into account overburdened or disadvantaged communities, right? And infusing that into our processes. New Jersey, right, our neighbors right to the east, great example of that. They have an environmental justice law now that is completely rooted in GIS. It requires that an environmental justice screening is done for any permitting application. It has to be done in their GIS-based deployment that they have. Amazing, just amazing. I couldn't have imagined this 28 years ago, but I should have imagined it, right? So, all right, citizen scientists, right? Bringing volunteers, the public, right? Interested citizens, right? Into the fold as well. Arizona's doing a great job of this, collecting water quality information, water quality concerns, right? Through the medium of GIS. And then lastly, climate change, or climate action, climate resiliency. I don't care where you stand, right? On the political aisle with this, right? The fact is we need to address flooding. We need to address severe storms, right? We need to address wildfires, things like that. And so we're seeing a lot of adoption of geographic approaches in geospatial technology. Here in Pennsylvania, at the White House, they're leveraging out-of-the-box GIS tools to help communities assess exposure to climate hazards, right? Cooling centers, right? See this in Los Angeles. New York just deployed a GIS-based cooling centers application, right? Of where cooling centers are, where folks can go for refuge during extreme heat days, right? And all of this is rooted in, as far as where those are placed, in geospatial analysis, right? Bringing together all this content that I've been talking about. So really, really awesome means of collaborating. Assessing climate risk in New Mexico to inform climate action, right? And the on-the-ground work that they're doing to reduce vulnerabilities. And then lastly, Hopefully we've all heard this notion of digital twins, right? Boulder, Colorado, great example of that. They actually do city simulation, right? In terms of, okay, we're projecting, or let's project a 100-year storm, or whatever the case may be. What impact is that going to have on our city? Not only what's going to flood, but what's the impact fiscally, right? That's going to happen, right, through that. And it's GIS and geography that brings all this together. So again, really, really impactful. I'm focused on environment, natural resources. We could do this very thing for any discipline, really. Health, emergency response, utilities, infrastructure, you name it, right? So hopefully it was helpful to see that. Goal here, we are doing impactful, critical work on our most pressing needs and challenges, right, across the world. I'm not being dramatic with that. That's exactly what's happening. And my call to action for you on this GIS day, right, is to celebrate yourselves, celebrate your accomplishments, communicate those, right? Use GIS technology to communicate them as well. Like I just used a story map here, right? Continue growing geographic approaches and geospatial strategies, right? With this notion that understanding precedes action, right? I hope I drove that home enough and that makes sense. Keep pushing the technology envelope and the issues being addressed, no matter how simple or complex. I mentioned how the Nevada stuff worked, how the COVID dashboard started, right? It was an idea by students, right? By the Cody that was in that video. He's not a GIS analyst, he's a biologist, right? But he had an idea, right? And it became a reality. And again, we are truly at the center of the world's most pressing issues. This is how the technology evolves too, right? So again, and I also want to stress, change may take time, but it takes action. We need to stay the course, take our action, adopt these approaches, things like that. That's how change will take place, no matter how short or long that takes. I also want to mention too, enable GIS programs, right, and initiatives to thrive. We need to collaborate, as I talked about a lot, but also collaborate with our IT infrastructure, with our IT staff and policies and deployments and things like that, so that when we want to move to cloud, right, when we want to adapt drones into our workflows and things like that, we're able to do so, but able to do so, of course, in a secured way to protect data, right, and deliver it in the way that it needs to be delivered and accessed by those who need to access it the way they need it. All of this, I talked about people, process, and technology. Another way to say that is our favorite word, governance, right? Establishing good organizational data management, web GIS, how we deliver our technical platforms. That's people, process, and technology. Really, really important, right? And without that, the technology will often fail, to be honest. To flip that around, though, this is fun. Like, there's nothing we can't be addressing, nothing we can't be collaborating on, working together, right, with our most pressing issues like I talked about. So have fun with this. Collaborate with each other. I'm a pretty introverted guy by nature, but I love collaborating, and nothing thrills me more than to collaborate with people and to see change based on that collaboration, right? So, and that's fun. I just have fun with it. Okay, so with that, here's my contact info. For those of you who are interested in connecting on LinkedIn, that's the first QR code up on the top there. I also invite you to check out our Esri Environment Natural Resources page. Some of those user stories and things that I showed are on there, plus a whole lot more. So a great place to go to learn more about all these things that I've been talking about and the various initiatives around environment and natural resources. Have an amazing GIS day, an amazing Geography Awareness Week. Don't forget it's Geography Awareness Week, right? And thank you so much for having me. It means the world to me. I can't even put it into words how much it means to be asked to come back here and to talk with you all and to collaborate with you all. And I look forward to the rest of the day. So thank you.